Yeah,
This
there is
conference
too.
will now be recorded.
We sometimes go around the table, just have people say who they are, so everybody knows who's on it. And I see there's only 14 of us right now, so maybe we can just do that. And then after we go around the table, I will introduce our speakers for today and be turning it over to Abby to start. So why don't we just go around the table, although I'm not quite sure. I think what I need to do is call people out as I see their face in my screen at the top. I'm not sure if this will work. The next person I see next to me is Diane Brandley. Diane, do you want to tell us anything? Any announcements for GreeningUSA?
Yes, well, speaking of sponsorship, on our new website, we will be, and actually, we have always offered up opportunities to sponsor our events. So if anyone's ever interested in sponsoring our events or our newsletter, annual meeting, green bag lunch, we're always happy to entertain that possibility. So as John said, we are a 501c3 in New York State, nonprofit educational organization. Not one person of us has ever received a penny for what we do. We're all volunteers. The money that we bring in on memberships and sponsorships pay for our minimal operating expenses, like paying for this subscription to go to a meeting, paying for insurance requirements, and it's always gratefully accepted. So if you find it in your heart to become a member, your 100% of your membership dues goes to paying for our small minimal expenses. And thank you to all of you for taking some time to join us on this yet another important conversation.
Thanks, Diane. So as I said, I'll call out each person individually with the information that I see on the screen, and then you can unmute and then remute yourself. So the next person I see is DC.
It's Dave Coburn.
David Coburn, just an interested citizen.
And former director of the county's Office of Environmental Management, right, Dave?
That's correct.
All right, well, thanks for being here today. The next person I see is CL.
That's Kurt Lindy.
Hello, I'm a retired salesman. I'm an amateur geologist, assistant scientist, and that's about wraps it up.
Thanks for joining us. The next person I see is BH.
Baxter Hankin.
Hi, I'm Baxter Hankin. I'm a recent graduate of the Syracuse University School of Architecture and aspiring real estate developer in Syracuse.
Well, welcome, Baxter. We we were trying to work something out. We maybe have Baxter make a presentation on a project that he did, and maybe that might be as early as September. We're still talking about the details. And then I'll skip Abby, and we'll come back to her. And next I see is LTM.
Lisa McCorkle.
Maybe Lisa's on a break. We'll just.
She typed her introduction in the chat box.
Yeah, she says she's a landscape architect with the LA group in Saratoga Springs. Welcome from Saratoga Springs.
Nice to see you, Lisa, and thanks for reminding me about the chat box, Abby. If anybody does have questions, we can use that. And next is, let's see, at BT. No.
Good day. I'm Brian Thorne. I direct our Sustainable Engineering graduate program here at the Rochester Institute of Technology, and I also sit on our town planning committee, which is wrestling with some energy siting issues.
Great. Thanks for being with us today. And next, I think that's Sean, who is one of our speakers today. So I think Sean will tell us a little bit about himself when he gets a chance to talk. Tell us about his background and how he got involved in this. I see one screen that's Richard Smardon. Richard is also going to be one of our speakers, and I'll have a few words to tell you about Richard if you don't know him already. And let's see, then I see Marcy. Unmute yourself.
I'm unmuted. I'm an ESF graduate, but I'm teaching an environmental science course at the Fulton campus of Cayuga Community College this fall, as well as ecology. And I've been trying to get people to come in or come in via Zoom maybe, and talk about alternative energy for that particular class. And I thought this might be a good place to come up with some networking. And so
great. I'm glad. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. And Mike Roach.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everyone. This is Mike Roach. I'm with RER Energy Group, and I am a solar project developer. We've got a number of community solar projects in development in upstate New York at this time. Appreciate you making this information available.
Oh, you're welcome. I see that I can find people's names by floating my mouse over on some people. Now, if their photo's not there, maybe. Oh yeah, Carrie, Carrie Ann. If you're there, Carrie, can unmute yourself and tell us a sentence about yourself.
So I was very happy to still get these. I just moved back to Central New York. I am a graduate of Casanova College, SUNY ESF, and I have a wood engineering background, but I currently work for a manufacturer throughout the country as a national senior care specialist, but would like to get back into the environmental side of things. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. And then we have SK. Let's see if it comes up. I don't see it.
It's Scott Kushner.
Okay, Scott.
Yeah, hi, I'm Scott Kushner. I'm with the Onondaga County Public Library System. I chair a sustainability initiative. That's a committee in the library system. And I'm also a member of GreeningUSA.
Great. Libraries have been a big supporter of sustainability. Welcome.
Scott has actually participated in our sustainability academies at the zoo. So thank you.
Yeah, it's too bad I missed it this year, but.
Yes, we all missed it this year.
Yeah, right. Well, maybe next year.
Maybe next year.
Bob Haley.
You have to unmute yourself.
All right, I know I was trying to unmute. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'm an architect and an educator, and I'm very supportive of GreeningUSA and Diane's efforts. I want to thank you personally, Diane, for adding another passionate group, the Focus Greater Syracuse group, and you've put on our, if I can use this little gap here, you've put on our event for next Thursday noon for Focus Forum, which is on your list of information that Diane sent out 2 days ago. And it's on healing the pandemic and healing the earth. We're going to have Neil Murphy, who most all of you know well, and Ed Mikolenko as our two speakers. So it'll be rich with ideas, and please join us if you can, and thank you.
Thanks, Bob, for being here.
Yeah.
DCA, oh, that's Dave Ashley. Yeah, I should recognize those initials. Dave, don't forget to unmute. While we're waiting for Dave to unmute, we have also Timothy Volk. Maybe Tim, go ahead.
Yep. Hi, my name's Tim Volk. I'm a faculty member up at ESF in the Sustainable Resources Management arena and teach classes in our Sustainable Energy Management and Sustainable Energy Graduate Program.
Fantastic. Thanks for being here. So our presentation today, we gave it the title, Getting New York State Powered by Its Landscape, Citing Renewable Energy Projects. This we had seen, Diane had seen an article about the latest New York State law about revising the siting process in New York State, and it talked about some the community issues, the NIMBY issues, and all the difficulty to get projects cited. And we thought, hey, wouldn't that be a great idea to look into those things, particularly when the Maxwell School and Isaac Olson contacted us and asked if we had any opportunities for internships this summer, that there were some students looking to work in the environmental area. And so we came up with two projects, one on housing that we presented a couple of weeks ago, and this project on citing renewable energy. And Abby Chi volunteered, contacted us, and she was a perfect fit for this project. So Abby's been working maybe not even 6 weeks pulling together information to get us up to speed on some of the issues relating to citing some of these projects, some of the latest changes in the legislation. Abby is affiliated with both Newhouse and the Maxwell School, working on a Master of Science in Public Relations and a Master of Arts in International Relations. She likes to call this that her work is in public diplomacy. So Abby's got a background in journalism, broadcast, and communication, and a bachelor's degree in that field from, and I might botch this pronunciation, it is Guangzhou Normal University in China. And so after completing that degree, she came here to Syracuse to study for her master's degree. Incidentally, I have to tell you that, and I haven't heard her sing yet, but she apparently is a pretty accomplished singer. Is that right, Abby? You were third place in the top 10 campus singers competition, and you served as the leading alto in the choir at your college. So maybe someday we can hear you sing. Probably you could post it on YouTube and we can watch you. And so Abby's been researching this project and has reached out. She's done all the work to reach out to the other panelists herself. So not only has she been researching the topic and pulling the information together, but she's also been in touch with the potential panelists and picking their brain, if you will, but also organizing this presentation today. And we held meetings with Abby occasionally, not quite once a week, maybe every other week, to assist her. So she's done a fantastic job as an intern working with GreeningUSA and pulling this together. So Sean Perry will be also speaking. Sean is a resident of Central New York and Western New York, hailing from Buffalo, and he works with the developer of the Alle-Catt wind farm project. I'm going to let Sean tell you a little bit about himself when Abby calls on him. And then we also will be hearing from Richard Smardon, who's a distinguished service professor emeritus at SUNY ESF, PhD in environmental planning from California, Berkeley, and a master's in landscape architecture from UMass. His one of his primary interests is visual impact assessment, and is an expert in that field. His recent book, The Renewable Energy Landscape, is a leader in the field, and I checked it out on Amazon today, and if you want to get a copy, about $116 will get you one. If you don't want to put out that much money for it, I see you can rent it for a month for only like $24. So that sounds like something you might want to do. I'm going to turn this over to Abby. I don't think I need to say anything else except maybe about questions. If you do have a burning question, you can put it in the chat. We'll be watching that. We probably won't interrupt the speakers unless it's something that needs to be clarified. I think Abby is planning to build in some pauses for questions, but hopefully at the end we'll have time for your comments and questions and a group discussion. So if I've covered all the bases, Abby, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, John. Also, thanks to everybody who is attending today. Thanks for your time and participation. And I believe this slide has been irritatingly annoying to you, so let's just move on. My name is Abby Cui. My topic for today's presentation is Getting New York State Powered by its Landscape, Citing Renewable Energy Projects in New York State. And first, I would like to walk us through my agenda for today's presentation. First, I would like to introduce the background of the sightings of renewable energy in New York State to date. And second, I would like to introduce the famous Article 10 and its pertaining ordinances that is currently regulating this field. And in the third and fourth part of my presentation, we will go into more details about two particular projects, one wind and one solar, to discover what is the element that is composing the opposition or the support for each program. And last but not least, we will address some unmet concerns with our panelists to discuss how can we better address the concerns or the issues that has been raised by the local residents. So if you have questions, just please type them into the chat box, and I believe Diane and John will take notes of that, and we will get back to your questions at a later point after my presentation. And first, let's get into the background part. Just as you read in my brief introduction to my presentation, the paradoxical fact about environmental protection is that the more popular clean and renewable energy seems to be all over the world, the more difficult it actually is to get the projects approved in New York State. And while we view this sentence, we may view this issue from two different perspectives. One is from a visitor perspective. If I go somewhere, I would be amazed that there are so many turbines along the shores, or there have been so many solar panels that is powering the city or the town. But actually for the local resident, they might see just the second picture on the right. They may only see that turbines have been struck down by the lightning, or it is throwing ice balls towards their windows. And just as Professor Smardon cited in his book, the addition of wind farms generally decreased visual quality for high quality landscapes, but actually increased the visual quality of lower quality landscape. And unfortunately, a lot of sightings that has been chosen by the developers in New York State are actually high quality landscapes. And we will get back to this planning issues or siting choosing issues at a later point in my presentation. So now I would like to walk you through some common elements of opposition in both wind projects and the solar project. The first one I would like to say in wind project is aesthetic issue, which is the singular most important concerns about renewable energy. And this is a quite subjective matter because some people would just say, I just don't want to see the turbine. I will find it super annoying around my house. And these people are claimed to be NIMBYs, not in my backyard people. So this is the most commonly raised concerns or objections from the local resident. The health impacts should be the second one. because people are constantly complaining about noise, shadow of flicker effects, lower light, tower light flasher at night, and blaze throw risks, and also the accretion of ice and things like that. And the third most commonly raised opposition elements is house depreciation. I don't want to put the final confirmation on this point because I think research is still lacking in this point for us to be sure that the sightings is actually decreasing the house or the property values, because some research show that wind farms have no impacts at all. However, others show that there's actually a decrease in the property values in around the sightings. So I would just call for more detailed research on this one, but this is actually another problem that has been raised by local residents. And fourth one is environmental values. This concerns a lot of wildlife that habitat on the lands, such as birds, marine life, and also others may concern about local fishing industry and recreational boating. And fifth one should be fairness and equity, because a lot of people may just feel they have the personal attachment of the lands that will be occupied by the turbines or the solar panels. And sometimes unfair distribution of community benefits, both financial and environmental benefits, would cause controversy among multiple stakeholders, and that's a huge problem. And also, last but not least, lack of trust in decision makers would also cause problem, because people would just say that I don't believe the governor, I don't believe the developer, and I just don't want to participate in this, so don't just plant that thing on my yard. Another issue I would like to stress is that small project size typically would cause difficult economic profile, but wind proposal fare better when public is engaged in the process and feel empowered about its results. So now let's move on to the solar projects. So what's the common elements of opposition here in solar projects? The first one is still the visual intrusion, because glare from solar collectors and reflection from the huge amount of panel, especially along the highway, will cause danger concerns if they're really reflecting a lot of light back to the viewers. And second one should be the reduction of cultivable land. And we'll get to this point later in my presentation because unlike wind farms, solar energy projects would really take up a lot of land, and it is not compatible with other creatures that has been originally on this land. And third concern is still ecosystem. It is the same as the environmental values. As I mentioned earlier, it is depriving a lot of land from the marine life and also from the wildlife here on this land. Fourth is the health impacts, because making the solar panels and disposing them would release a lot of hazardous chemicals from the inside, the silicons and things like that. That cause a lot of controversies among the stakeholders. So since we have already familiarized ourselves with all the common elements of opposition and maybe just comments from the local residents, how have we addressed these concerns? So I would like to talk about the democratic outreaching processes that has been helping the local residents to express their comments or concerns for the local developers to better their development. And first, I would like to introduce is the State Environmental Quality Review Act. It is established in 1975, and it established a process for looking at new developments on the site. It is a stipulation enacted that all local and state government agencies must uniformly reflect the environmental impacts when considering taking social and/or economic factors into action. And there have been changes and alterations over the years to make it better fit for New York State and New Yorkers to cite the clean and renewable energy projects. And second one I would like to introduce is the very famous Article 10 of Public Service Law. The Power New York Act of 2011 established a process for the siting of electric generating facilities and the repowering project. And a multi-agency siting board is charged with streamlining the permitting process for power plants of 25 megawatts or greater. Projects that scaling between 20 megawatts to 24 megawatts have the choice to opt in on at their own will. So if they would like to opt in, they can be participating in this, but if they don't want to, it is okay, it is fine. And this Article 10 would invite a lot of public participation into the review process, and I will show that in the next slide. Article 10 follows a 5-phase process, and it has to go, every single project has to go through pre-application, application, administrative hearings, siting board decisions, and compliance procedures in the entire review process. And every phase includes opportunities for public comments to be sent to the developers. And there's also the docket website for them to communicate. You can also find a link to the website in my reference slide as the second last slide, I believe. Article 10 also has some problems. Establishing Article 10 gives the state government more power than the local municipalities, because if the local Senate or local assembly fail to appoint the 2 members from the local representatives to the 7-member board, the governor actually has the power to assign or appoint somebody to be the member board, and that would change the whole thing. And also it would take years for developers to get through Article 10 process. And Article 10 is also get a lot of complaints from the developers. It would lengthening the review process for them to get things done. And the last act I would like to introduce is the Accelerated Renewable Energy Growth and Community Benefit Act. This is just passed this year in April, and it will create an office of renewable energy siting to establish uniform standards for environmental impacts. This office will issue final decisions on permit applications within 1 year. And for projects on certain former industrial and commercial sites, decisions will be issued within 6 months. And also projects must still comply with local regulations unless the office determines that the regulations are unduly burdensome. And we will get back to this point later in my examples to discuss this. So from our understanding from our previous discussion on the commonly seen opposition elements, we would intuitively assume that wind energy projects would face more opposition or challenges in its review process than a solar energy project. But in the following slides, I would like to provide a counterintuitive example or real life examples to illustrate that we can also have a different mindset when we consider about these problems. So let's move on to our particular examples here. The first one I would like to introduce is Alle-Catt Wind Farm. It is a successfully approved wind project, and it came with a halo, and I would like to introduce the halo in a later point. Alle-Catt Wind Farm developed by Invenergy, which is a company based in Chicago, has been under consideration since 2017 and received approval for construction in this June. And hopefully it can be operational in 2022, but I don't want to put a final word here since we're facing this global pandemic. Who knows how fast the construction can be, but we should have faith in this. And the reason why I told you that this farm came with a halo is that it will be the largest siting in to date in New York State, and will be the largest wind farm project in the northeastern United States. So I think one of the reasons why this project can be successfully approved is that it is a star in this industry. So if you vote this down, you might regret that you are losing something to brag about in New York State. And here is a link to the layout maps of the Invenergy projects. And also, this is a strategic way that a company or the team has been employed to communicate with the local residents and other concerned stakeholders. And below, I would like to walk you through the exact scale information about this project. Alle-Catt Wind Farm is a 454 million wind project with 117 turbines spreading over 30,000 acres of private lands located in the following 3 counties. And it is able to generate 340 megawatts of electricity, which is enough to power 134,000 homes, and currently enjoys the support of over 300 local tax-paying residents. This is a fabulous performance for energy projects like this. So it is applause and or admiration. And other aspect of the scale of this project is Alle-Catt Wind Farm will generate up to 78 million in local property tax revenue over the 20 years, which means local governments will receive $3.2 million annually in payments from the wind farm with an estimated 2% acceleration per year over these 20 years. And as for the employment, it will create between 200 and 300 construction jobs with a payroll of $15 million lasting up to 9 months, and will provide up to 13 permanent facility operation jobs even after the construction is completed. And other corporate social responsibility I would like to stress here is the company will help to pay the school and fire department taxes, which directly benefits the local community. After introducing all these elements, I would like to share with you that the 5 factors that were responsible for the ultimate success. I summarized these 5 factors, including experience, representativeness, communication, environmental friendliness, and critical endorsement from all the publications I have been gone through about Alle-Catt Wind Farm, and also the back and forth of the communication between the multiple stakeholders and the developers. And now we will go into more details to explain how these 5 factors serves to the final success of the project. The first one is experience. Invenergy has successfully completed the development of 3 energy projects in New York State. 2 of them are in Wyoming counties, where the Alle-Catt Wind Farm will be located, and these 2 projects are considered as the large-scale project that is over 25 megawatts generation. And what these serves to the final success is that the local residents can be confident in the company and the developing team that if they have been done this somewhere else in our home county, they may face the same problems as we have in this place, and they have the experience to solve these problems. So they would also have the ability to address our concern and our problems here in this new project. So I think this is very important for the local residents to have faith in the company and the developing team. The second one is representativeness. When Invenergy or the particular developing team of Alle-Catt Wind Farm is talking to the local residents or other stakeholders, it is not actually simply selling this project to you or trying to convince you to participate in this project. It is actually talking to the local stakeholders on behalf of the entire wind industry. Because if we view this from the consumption perspective, wind farms are a major energy source in the United States, providing about 7% of all electricity last year, up from about 2% in 2010. Between 2009 and 2016, the cost of wind energy has dropped 66%. It is bringing these financial and environmental benefits to this local community in particular. They are not trying to just get you something without explaining how this can serve you in this local community. And if we view this from the employment perspective, the wind industry employs between 1,000 and 2,000 people in New York State. This is the trend that you will have to embrace in maybe the following 20 to 50 years, that the wind energy will just be a major constructing force in both the New York State and the entire nation as a whole. And third one is communication. I found this quote from one of the publications I read. It said there was no formal presentation by company officials. Instead, large maps and satellite images of the wind farm area with yellow dots where wind turbines are proposed were on display, and energy representatives were available to speak one-on-one with residents and answer questions. And below here's the link to the parcels of all the documents of this project. And you can feel free to click on that and read it in your own time. You can really see how diligent the team has been in their efforts to communicate with the local residents and how they keep the record of this communication, the back and forth of their communication and all the updates they made available on their official website. So please feel free to click on that. And here's a picture of the wind turbines I found on their official website to showcase how the wind works, because some people express their concerns that wind is intermittent and you cannot make sure that this thing is actually working all the time. And we'll get back to this point later, because one of the controversy raised in this project is the turbines is actually taller than previous models because of the longer blades, and it actually generates more power, but it also raises concerns. And we will talk to this with Sean later in my presentation. But this is just an infographic to show that how this thing would work on your land and how this is helping to generate more power. And the fourth one about the factors that lead to the ultimate success is environmental friendliness. Alle-Catt wind farm take full advantage of existing transmission lines, which minimize the need for new infrastructures. And after construction is completed, landowners can use approximately 98 to 99% of their land for its previous use, whether it be agriculture, hunting, or timber. This is really important because given the visual intrusion that the turbines would give for the local residents, it is pivotally important for them to have their lands for its original use. And this really helps a lot in their communication and their alleviation created for the local residents. Last but not least is critical endorsement. Invenergy has been working diligently with multiple state and federal agencies to make sure there's compliance. One of the regulation it complied is U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service land-based wind energy guidelines. And also it creates a lot of service, and it employed communications with stakeholders to make sure compliance is always there. And they also create a monitoring process to make sure no wildlife, including fish, birds, owls, rats, all the animals like that, will not be hurt by the turbines or the construction process. After all the facts that we discussed, I would like to introduce you to Sean Perry, the local residents and the local developer of Alle-Catt Wind Farm project, and start our first panel discussion. So hi, Sean, could you please just introduce yourself a little bit to the audience today?
Thanks, Abby. I'm just gonna unmute myself. So my name's Sean. I am local to Buffalo, New York. Graduated 2016 from Geneseo with a background in political science. And after college, I kind of found myself into voter contact and political organizing. That's kind of my background. So I worked in 2016. I worked on some ballot initiatives, worked in the midterms, and then afterwards kind of found myself looking for a way out of it. I saw a job that was a green energy organizer, and I thought that would be kind of easy to do and make money while I look for something more stable. But turned out to be actually assisting in the development of the Alle-Catt wind farm. And in finding this job, ended up finding this entire industry of renewable development in New York State, and just got incredibly excited and passionate about developing these projects. So that's kind of why I'm here. I currently work for Kivett and have been assisting with this wind farm for the past, I'd say, about 1.5 years now.
Okay, great. Now let's move on to our harsh questions that raised by the local residents. First one is, research has shown that most of the power for upstate counties is already 90% emissions free. So the new wind projects are selling power outside of New York. So their question is that how the power generated by the project is benefiting the community in particular, or is the local residents just simply receiving like the credits from you as a financial benefits that is generated by the project?
So I think it's a little bit of both. I think that you can kind of break it up into the power that's generated and the economic benefits that come out of the project. So 90% of the upstate grid, as you could call it, is emissions free, and that's mostly from hydropower, nuclear, and to a lesser extent, but growing now, wind and solar. So that is true. But if I'm thinking kind of from the climate change and international perspective, just because that our upstate grid is 90% emissions free doesn't mean we should stop there. There is still clean energy demand in upstate New York. And the Alle-Catt project in particular, there are some wind farms that are selling project outside of the state, but Alle-Catt in particular, the interconnection point is in the town of Yorkshire in Cattaraugus County. That'll go directly into the grid, and it's sold wholesale to National Grid. And once local Western New York demand is met, the power will go throughout the rest of upstate.
Yes, and especially it is taking advantage of the existing grid, not to build new ones for like construction. It is just such a waste. So it is better for the power generated here just directly serve the local residents and the community.
Absolutely. And I think that even more so for the local community members is the economic benefits. And the fact that there is so much wind capacity in this particular area, the community wants to reap that benefit for themselves as well. So the project will provide roughly $9.1 million a year. This comes in host community agreements, which is money directly that goes to the towns, pilot payments, which goes to the counties, and then some of that is dispersed among the towns. Landowner payments, where we are paying the landowners that we've leased the land from. We pay school districts, fire districts, and then there is a great deal of secondary economic activity that is created from construction, especially when this particular area has a lot of gravel and aggregate manufacturers that we'll be using for construction of the project.
Great. And the second question, the siting board ignored evidence that wind farms was not designed to withstand a potential earthquake along the Clarendon-Linden fault system, which crosses its 30,000-acre footprint. So how have you and your team addressed the concerns over the earthquake problem?
So yeah, that was interesting. I think, so the siting board, when they gave the issue ordering the certificate of Alle-Catt in June, they kind of largely punted the seismic risk issue. So we had discussed the seismic risk in our application. And for reference, the Clarendon-Linden fault system runs pretty much directly through Wyoming County and the top of Allegheny County, so directly adjacent to the Alle-Catt project. So while it is a legitimate concern, it's potentially misleading to say that they ignored evidence, because there really wasn't evidence that this particular wind farm system wouldn't be able to withstand seismic activity. And it's also good to know that the Clarendon-Linden fault system also runs directly through the Noble Bliss Wind Park in the towns of Eagle, Bliss, Wethersfield, and also directly adjacent to Invenergy's projects in Sheldon and Orangeville. So, and those projects have been around since, I think, like 2008, 2009. So these are different turbine models, but the technology is only rather improved. So in terms of addressing the potential earthquake concern for residents, to be honest, a lot of residents really didn't have the concern. I think I spoke with maybe 3 or 4 people about it, and I kind of just repeated what I've told you guys, which is there is a concern, but based on the kind of historical seismic activity in the region, and the fact that there are a lot of wind parks in the area that run along this fault system, it's really more of, it's not as significant an issue. And what the siting board did was kind of put the burden on Invenergy to approve or to prove that this was designed to sustain an earthquake in our compliance filings. So in our final geotech report, we'll have to prove that.
That's very comforting.
Yeah.
And the last question, oh, I cannot move on. Freedom 2007 wind law includes a 450 foot height limit on wind turbines. However, Alle-Catt wind farm calls for 600 foot wind turbines. It is the same height as the last model, but this new turbine has much longer blades, and this produces more energy. And also the siting board has said it will not consider evidence, including this local law, that is presented after the close of the hearing examiner's report in December 2019. Then how did you and your team manage to make the turbines come to meet a height limit? And how did you address the concerns raised by the local residents that this is safe, no extra health risks you will have to face after the completion of the construction?
Yeah, so the turbines are the nacelle of the turbine, which is kind of where the gearbox and the power is produced, is the same height as the turbine model in the Freedom wind law. It's just that the rotor blades are much longer, and that allows the wind turbine to produce a lot more energy. So for instance, you know, the Sheldon turbines are 1 to 1.5 megawatts per nameplate capacity per turbine. Alle-Catt is going to be roughly 4.3. So, you know, a lot more energy can be generated from just a single wind generator as opposed to the other ones or previous models. But one thing to consider is, so if we go back maybe 4 years, when the first Alle-Catt developers were looking at this area, the 2007 wind law in Freedom was in place, or similar laws to that were in place in all the other host towns. And at the time, they were really progressive laws based on the technology at the time. So, you know, you need a wind ordinance law that has a height limit. 450 was pretty much kind of maxing out what was acceptable height limits for the technology at the time. So the developers, you know, kind of correctly assumed that, okay, this is a good area for wind, and the towns are welcoming of wind. So when you go into a project like that in the early stages, you know, you say, look, we're going to be using much bigger turbines, which are, you know, more up to date, more technologically advanced, and can produce more energy. And the towns have to make the decision whether or not they want to welcome the project in. And if they do choose to, they have to kind of update their wind ordinances. So by this time last year, in kind of summer 2019, all of the host community towns that were getting wind turbines had, I would say, wind ordinances that were favorable to the project, that would welcome the project into their towns. And then in terms of the examiner's report in December and the evidentiary hearings, so at that time, the towns in question were Freedom and Farmersville. Both had laws that were drafted in 2019 that welcomed the project. After that evidentiary hearing and closed the record down, the town of Farmersville, some NIMBYs got on the board and they passed a new law that said they dropped the height limit down to 450, and then they increased setbacks and a lot of restrictions that would, in essence, ban a industrial wind project from coming into the town. So the examiner said, first of all, we're not going to look at it because it's after the close of the record. And they also, speaking on what you had said before about local laws and exemptions, they decided that this was an unreasonably burdensome law. And they said, we're not going to choose to make Invenergy apply that law and instead use the one from 2019. So in that sense, early and consistent community and government outreach was really what drove the project forward and made it successful. I think that government outreach and making stakeholders aware of what was needed to move the project forward was probably the best thing that we did.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
Abby, we have a question on that part of your presentation. Kurt Lindy wants to know, did the school districts end up with pilot agreements?
So the school districts, the pilot agreements are still in, they're currently proposed. So Allegheny County actually approved theirs yesterday, but in Cattaraugus and Wyoming, they're still proposed. They haven't approved them yet. But the way that it works is the pilot payments go directly to the county, and the county disperses them to the schools. So each school district is going to be receiving a certain amount of money each year from that pilot agreement. However, and there's a certain rate, but the final numbers have not been, how should I say, kind of dispersed yet, just because it's based on how many megawatts are being produced in each school district.
So is there any other questions that we would like to ask Sean before we move on to the solar project? No? Okay. Thanks, Sean. Oh, we've got one more question. How many years are the agreements?
So the agreements for the governments are based on 20-year intervals. So host community agreements and pilot agreements go for 20 years, and the land agreements there's development contracts and then contracts when the project is operational. Those also last for the 20-year lifespan of the project.
So are we okay to move on to our solar project? Okay. Thanks, Sean, and thanks for those who sent questions in the chat box. Feel free to send your questions in the chat box in the following slides, and we will get back to your questions at a later point. So now let's move on to our solar project. Bear Ridge Solar Project is an ongoing but highly controversial solar project that I chose for this research. It is still active, but it is facing a lot of opposition from the local residents, and they also formed a party to express their concerns. But first, let's just again go through the scale of this project. Bear Ridge Solar Project, developed by Cypress Creek Renewables, which is a company based in Los Angeles, is a 100 megawatt solar energy generation facility sited on approximately 900 acres of land in the 2 towns in Niagara County, powers between 15,000 and 20,000 homes and businesses, and creates up to 300 construction jobs, and also represents a total of $10 million in contributions to local community through a payment in lieu of tax agreement. And other aspect I would like to introduce is that this project will offset an estimated 160,000 tons of carbon dioxide annually, which is the equivalent of removing 15,000 cars from the road each year. This environmental benefits of the project will provide an economic benefit equivalent to $6.2 million per year to the state of New York. And also the Start Point Central School District alone will receive approximately $200,000 in tax revenue each year, more than 10 times the amount the school district currently receives from the parcels. Given these aspects of the project, I would have to say that I don't see any updates after last December on their official website, and their Facebook account is empty. Also, I don't see any updates on the docket website that they can just respond to the local residents' concerns or comments after January. Yes, January. I reached out to their development manager, and they told me they reach out to their subscribers of their e-newsletter once a month to provide some updates on the project, and also they are planning to submit their application to the state by the end of this year. And if approved, construction could tentatively start as soon as 2022. I tried to reach out to the local group called Cambria Opposition to Industrial Solar. This seems to be a highly active group that try to stop this project from moving on. But actually, I tried over a month to reach out to them, but none of the members replied to my emails or my messages on Facebook. But I still provide this following slide to showcase something they can try to promulgate in their communication with the stakeholders, just to show that there are some values in this project and you should get a little bit understanding of this before you say no to us. The first one is accomplishment. In New York State, Cypress Creek Renewable has been working to advance clean energy for over 3 years through its 19 permitted community solar project and over 50 others in development. This is something like earlier I discussed the experience of Invenergy that they can take advantage of. The second one is experience. Their environmental design and research team have been involved in the review and permitting of over 50 utility scale renewable energy projects. And also other two corporate social responsibility aspect I would like to stress is environmental, agricultural, and economic. As for the environmental and agricultural corporate social responsibility, they plan to plant native wildflowers on the land with the solar panels to help keep area plants pollinated and improve soil and agricultural productivity for local farmland. And as for the academic and economic corporate social responsibility, Cypress Creek Renewable has a partnership with the Hudson Valley Community College Workforce Development Institute to reduce course fees in solar job training with a focus on recruiting veterans, women, and underrepresented communities in the solar industry. I think this is this is very touching move to me, that they are this considerate about other community members, and they take the effort to make this happen. But still, this is highly controversial, and I would like to discuss the factors that were responsible for these controversies. I summarized 3 factors through the publications and their comments on their feedbacks on the comments. So the factors are violation of the local zoning ordinance, hazardous materials, incompatible land usage that this project is bringing to the community. The first is violation of the local zoning ordinance. Cypress Creek Renewables is aware that Bear Ridge Solar does not comply with Cambria's local zoning laws and its comprehensive plan. Actually, it is turning the farmland into the industrial land, and I believe the local residents are not happy about this. They also has refused to discuss the town of Cambria's local zoning laws with members of the town board. And they also has failed to specify what benefits the Bear Ridge Solar Project will bring to the town of Cambria. I can understand that if you are bringing these troubles to me without talking to me how this is benefiting me, I would also be upset. So I think this is a legitimate concern from the local residents. And second one is the hazardous material. I found this quote in a publication that Assembly Member Angelo Morinello commenting on why Bear Ridge Solar Development Team is holding back their permit application. They are realizing not only the opposition to the lack of local input, but also evidence is coming out about how toxic the materials to make the solar panels are, or the inability to recycle them or dispose them. This is really true that one of the components inside the silicon is quartz. Quartz undergoes processing with hazardous chemicals in high temperature furnaces to produce the silicons. And also the photovoltaic panels contain lead, cadmium, and other toxic chemicals that cannot be removed without breaking apart the entire panel. And also creating those solar panels is a very water intensive process. We are wasting a lot of water to build the solar panels, and we have to release the hazardous chemicals when we dispose them in maybe 15 or 20 years. And the major safety concerns come from the close proximity of Start Point Central School to this project. So I believe the local parents would think that no matter how much money you bring to the school district, you cannot poison my kids in this area. Last but not least, incompatible land usage. Unlike the wind energy project we discussed earlier, which gives back the local residents about 98 to 99% of land, solar panels are not able to share the land as wind turbines does, because if the solar panels have to be located there, nothing else can be there, and it is taking away the land that is originally enjoyed by the local birds. The loss of habitats for birds includes nesting sites, nest building materials, food sources like bugs, and places to hide due to the habitat loss. So this is very serious concerns raised by the local residents. I added my email address in the last slide, that if you have resources to reach out to the Cambria opposition to solar industry, please reach out to me, because this research hasn't been finished yet, and I still would like to talk to them about their concerns. And some good and bad news I would like to share with you is that last October, the Niagara County Legislature required solar energy companies proposing projects in Niagara County to provide a bond or other appropriate form of security to cover the cost of removing and decommissioning solar panels. This is the first time that a legislature came up with this, because normally legislature would just require the developing team or the company to provide fund for communication purpose. This money can be used for a litigation or cost generated in the communication process. But actually, this is the first time that the legislature came up with this idea to require the company to provide money for dispose the solar panels. But however, the project only needs the approval of the state siting board that's appointed by the governor. Like I introduced, if the local senate or assembly fail to appoint members, these members can be appointed by the governor. If the governor signs off, the project can move forward regardless of whether the towns or county agrees. So this is just a problem that can never be solved, and I believe that the local residents are still trying to stop the project from moving on, and we can just sit tight and wait for further news from those local residents. And now I would like to address some unmet concerns in these siting problems. I put a quote mark on the unmet word because I think the following questions I would like to ask are just unaddressed comments or concerns raised by the local residents, and they are not as commonly seen as the former 10 elements I discussed earlier in both wind and solar project. So let's just steal some thunder with our panelists. And now I would like to introduce our second panelist, Professor Smardon, who is a retired SUNY ESF professor and a major contributor to the book, The Renewable Energy Landscape. So hello, Professor Smardon.
Hi, Abby, and hello, everybody that's here.
Sorry for keeping you waiting for so long.
So just a little bit of background. Besides doing the book, I've been involved the last few years in, since I'm supposed to be retired, but I'm failing miserably at it. Actually working with some siting issues from wind farms up in the Tug Hill Plateau, and I'm now involved with looking at siting of wind farms in federal waters off New York State for some of the offshore wind siting stuff. Primarily looking at visual impact, but also community impact as well. So, you know, the book has chapters basically on the social acceptability of renewable energy, both in North America and Europe and Australia, and also has a chapter on public participation, which I think is the key piece that we're looking at today.
Yes, I enjoyed the book very much. So if you take interest in this project, please just purchase a book or just borrow the book for a month. It is very interesting. So now let's move back to our questions. One of the problem that is raised by the local residents is that project construction and grid building would need a lot of fossil fuel backup. So how can we address the concerns that we have to burn the fossil fuel before we provide the clean and renewable energy back to the local residents?
Well, one of the big issues has been, you know, base load of energy in New York State and elsewhere. And a lot of the base load, the stuff that you need power all the time on the grid, a lot of it comes from nuclear in New York State and hydro. And some of it, a few remaining plants have carbon energy sources, right? So across the United States and other parts of the world, they're thinking natural gas is a great bridging fuel, right? So we can continue to burn natural gas, which hopefully has lower climate damaging substances, but it's the idea that we need to maintain that base flow. And how do we do that to bridge to the time that we can have much more or higher percentage of renewable energy that will also deal with the peak energy demand as well as the base flow? So that's the key problem.
Yes. Okay. Next question.
So the problem is you got to explain this to folks, right? And folks don't know a lot about how their energy is generated, right? So we need a whole sort of energy education issue in terms of, you know, articulating that.
Yes. And also the average lifespan of a solar panel is about 20 years, but high temperatures can accelerate the aging process for solar cells, and snow dust and other natural events include tornadoes and earthquakes can cause material fatigue on the surface and in the internal electric circuits, gradually reducing the panel's power output and requiring early replacement. And also turbines can be struck down by lightnings. So some of their question is that, is it worth it that we build and renew infrastructures every 15 to 20 years, especially when disposing them or replace them would cause the release of hazardous chemicals? So how can we address these kind of concerns?
Well, I think a good way to do that is what we call life cycle analysis, which basically means, from the beginning to end, when something, how do you produce the entity, whether it's a solar panel or a wind turbine, what kind of energy do we use when we construct it or replace it? What do we need to maintain it? And then what do we need to decommission it, and other kind of things that we can't capture or things that happen that we don't want when it's decommissioned. So the thing is, if we understand the whole life cycle of the entity, whether it's a solar farm or a wind farm, we can better address these issues, I think. And the problem is that we don't know a lot in some of these cases, but I think this people's genuine concern is we need to be efficient with utilization of natural resources as we develop, manufacture, install, decommission all these facilities.
Still just communication required.
Yes.
Last question. Candidate Biden plans to spend the full $2 trillion in his first 4-year term if he's elected, and aims to spur the installation of millions of solar panels and tens of thousands of wind turbines. So some local residents are questioning that, why don't we just upgrade existing renewable energy plants, like we can replace the blades with longer ones for more power generation? But is it really necessary that we build new ones instead of just upgrade the old ones that has been facilitating us in the power generation?
Well, but what's happening, as was mentioned earlier in the wind case study that you looked at, larger wind turbines are more efficient and produce more power. And what's happening in North America, and especially in Europe, is that a lot of the wind farm units are old and they're being replaced with larger units which produce more power and are more efficient. They'll use more materials for that. And also they happen to have a bigger impact because they're just bigger, depending on where you put them. And then you deal in some cases with cumulative impact. In Europe, there's cases off the UK and Scotland and the Netherlands that we have thousands of wind turbines offshore, literally blocking the horizon line, right? So you have what we call cumulative impact. We're producing a lot of renewable energy, but at what cost? So there's a lot of pros and cons to this, and this thing needs to be carefully looked at. So whether we're sort of maintaining the system, whether it's solar or wind or some other form of energy, or building new energy plants, we have to calculate what are the impacts, what are the pros and the cons, what are the trade-offs?
Yes. So not only communication, also more detailed research is still lacking to do that.
Yes.
Okay. Before we move on to our viewers' discussion with our audience today, I would like to add some personal thoughts while I undertake the research here over the summer. The first one is, as you know, I'm from China, so infrastructure construction like this would happen overnight, and it has a highly centralized planning before the construction starts, and even before the development process or the review process would be undertaken. So my suggestion for New York State is the centralized planning for the sightings. So if we have centralized planning, at least 3 aspects of the siting issues can be alleviated. First is, if we have centralized planning, I think we have the ability to improve the regulations in the first place before the review process starts. So we can come up with better regulations or other pertaining ordinances to better facilitate the construction and the development process. And second is that if we have centralized planning, we can decide where to build those sightings. So we can choose to put them on the brownfields or abandoned industrial properties to make sure that the greenfield or farmland can be saved for their previous purposes. This has been happening in United States. because the Bureau of Land Management has identified 24 solar development zones within the 6-state area in the South, including states like Nevada and states like that, with low-level environmental conflicts. So if we can make sure that there is centralized plan that we want to build sightings here, here, and here, we don't have to worry that some of the sightings would be planned on the highly controversial land that would generate a lot of concerns or controversies. And finally, centralized planning would also make sure the power generated by the sightings can be commercially competitive. For one thing, I think clean and renewable energy has to face the challenge among themselves, like the power generated by solar has to worry about the power generated by wind. And on another hand, I think clean and renewable energy has to face the challenge imposed by the traditional fossil fuel companies. And sometimes to make sure that this power can be limited, the traditional fossil fuel companies would try to manipulate the local people to raise their objections or oppositions to the sightings and in the entire review process. And it is fair play. This is free market. You can try to protect your own benefits, but I think employing the clean and renewable energy should be the trend all over the world, especially here in New York State when we have these ordinances and a highly ambitious goal that we will accomplish in the following years. And second one is I strongly call for better two-way communications. For the developers, I think they should employ more strategic information dissemination approaches to try to reach out to more stakeholders to make sure that everybody's interest is met. And also, I think they should guide the development with the feedbacks that they receive from the comments from the docket website that you can click on your own time in a later point. And also for the residents, I would truly hope that they can be more open-minded than they are, especially given the climate leadership and community Protection Act established at this point. I think they can try to embrace clean and renewable energy as I do in the later, in the coming 20 years before the sweeping change would take place in the state. And also, I would like to propose another study to examine what kind of democratic outreaching process is effective and which are not in the following study here while I'm in Syracuse. So if John and Diane is still looking for someone who would undertake that topic, I would still love to help. And here are my reference. If you want a more readable version, just please reach out to Diane and she will forward the more readable version to you. And thanks for your participation today. Below is my contact information. If you have sources to reach out to Cambria opposition to industrial solar, just reach out to me. Thank you for your time and for your patience. Thank you for everything.
So we had a couple of comments in the chat box. Mike Roach, did you want to unmute yourself and verbally give us your comments?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Diane. Appreciate the opportunity. Appreciate all the information that was presented. A couple of pieces. And so I work in solar development kind of on a smaller scale than the industrial projects that you've talked about here. And I think that's one important point that I would like to make. We're working on a number of community solar projects, and the framework in New York State to do that is projects that are 5 megawatts AC or less. And the thing about community solar, so obviously it is larger than, say, a residential system or even a commercial system on a rooftop or adjacent to the property. So it's larger than that, but it is smaller than the 100 megawatt or 900 megawatt projects that are the wholesale projects. The thing about community solar, it falls in between, as I said, 5 megawatts. And the real benefit of community solar is that it allows, more so than the previous framework, community solar allows people who otherwise would not be able to avail themselves to the benefits of renewable energy. prior to community solar, if you wanted to install a solar array because you supported renewable energy and you saw the financial benefit to doing so, well, a couple of things had to be in place. You had to have the financial resources to do that. You had to be able to write a check to make that upfront investment for that solar array. And you had to have somewhere to put it. So either you had to own your land, or you had to own your home where you own the roof that you could install it on. So the benefit of community solar is that it really democratizes those benefits from renewable energy, makes them available to people who do not have the financial resources to invest in a solar array on the front end, or perhaps people that are not homeowners but are renters that live in an apartment, but still should not be sidelined from the benefits that renewable energy brings. And admittedly, we are in a transition energy-wise here, right? We've had 150 years or more of fossil fuel generated energy. We are turning a corner to a renewable energy economy. So that there is adjustment, there is change, but that's a key thing so I don't want people to be dissuaded from the idea of community solar as it kind of fits in between large scale and individual solar. And I can also tell you that in developing these projects, we are in fact co-locating. It doesn't eliminate the other benefits. We are co-locating on a number of our projects. We've got a project up in the Peru, New York, up near Plattsburgh, that the spacing is such and the land availability is such that haying will continue to occur on that site. It's not ideal. It's actually an apple orchard. This land is not productive for growing apple trees, and so the farmer has let it go fallow. In the past several years, there was some hay being harvested off of that site, so that will continue. The spacing between the rows of solar panels is such that haying will continue there. On another project, we are working with a local partner. This is in the Adirondacks, in Saranac Lake. We are working with a local organization that is involved in a pollinator project, and so that site will be seeded with pollinator-friendly species. And so that's a 10-acre site that will not only will it generate solar energy, it will provide pollinator-friendly habitat as well. So we are in transition. There are all of these opportunities to optimize multiple benefits over multiple use cases. And I just want people to be aware of that. Let me just quickly, so I don't know if there are any questions about that, but those considerations are being taken into account, and the ability to have other agricultural uses and environmentally beneficial uses occur.
Thanks, Mike. That's good to know. We did want to slip in one more. Kurt Lindy had a couple of comments. Did you want to unmute yourself and verbally give us your comments?
Am I? Two comments. So one with the pilot agreements with the life cycle of the turbines, if they are indeed 20 years, which I think they actually are longer. Somebody else had a comment that they are indeed longer. In the pilot agreements, the companies never end up paying their full share of taxes, and that's wrong. So that the serving on the school board, where the pilot agreements were only for 10 years at maximum, this is a real stretch in favor of the companies. And the second one, I lost it here. I'm sorry, I lost it.
The second one was about environmental justice issues and central
planning. If you go to central planning, where you don't have the local residents, and somebody sitting in Albany or be in Washington D.C. determines what's going to be happening here, then you end up with environment injustice that we have seen so prevalent in this country for so many years. And that is a real danger that I am I don't want to underplay that issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to provide a possibility of thinking here that if this helps, I'm glad. But if this approach would create other problems, maybe we can find another way out.
Complicated, very complicated.
In terms of the pilot issue as well, so that 20-year pilot agreement is the initial one. So that has the ability to be renegotiated after 20 years. And it includes an escalator as well, so that it's not falling behind to inflation. But pilot agreements are kind of standard across the wind industry, just for the simple fact that, like in a project like Alle-Catt, where you have 5 separate taxing jurisdictions for towns and 3 separate for counties, the company really can't predict what the tax rate is going to be all the time. So they'll typically, and this is true for most wind energy projects, negotiate a standard $5,000 per megawatt rate, which is in effect for the duration of the life cycle. So it's a 20-year initial agreement, but it has the ability to be renegotiated down the line. And payments to the schools will obviously keep up for the duration of that 20-year cycle.
John had a question. He wants to know if there's a New York State plan for developing, citing renewable energy. That sounds like a question for Rick Smardon. Rick, do you have an answer to that one?
Well, there've been a number of things that have been done in New York State, and the governor's office has been pushing renewable energy like mad, especially for offshore. So there are some new goals for New York State across the board for renewable energy. I can't remember the particulars right now, but I think everybody look up the most recent stuff. I think they look at New York State and renewable energy goals. You're gonna find it.
Yeah, but goals are one thing. What about some specific sort of sorting through citing possibilities, creating zones where projects may be necessary or might be more easily to develop? Is there some structural plan aside from goals?
No, a good question, John. No, not for New York State. But states like Texas have actually done that. Actually, Texas and I think Kansas have actually done. State of Texas is probably the furthest ahead, saying put it here. Literally, they have zones that have been declared for the whole state of Texas for renewable energy development, as well as other kinds of energy development.
Yes, Professor Smardon has introduced this in his book, especially the southern states that are abundant in their low quality land has special ordinances or zoning planning on the sightings of clean and renewable energies, and people there are used to this, so it is more plausible for the governments or other agencies there to make those plans possible over there.
But Abby, those are mainly in federal lands in the western states, the lands owned by BLM, U.S. Forest Service, etc. We don't have that so much in the east, so it's a whole different layer in terms of landowners.
I can tell you that's actually currently right now underway by NYSERDA and the Department of Public Service. A recent solicitation was issued. There is an effort out there to pre-qualify optimal sites for renewable energy development. That I got an email on it just within the past 2 weeks. For this solicitation to do exactly what you're talking about, John, is to go out and identify sites that have no higher, better purpose and would provide optimal sites for renewable energy development. That's happening right now by NYSERDA.
Well, thank you.
Very good.
So we have a lot of interest in the chat box. We've got Scott Crowell who's asking where would you go to get information on potential community
Scott, maybe
solar
you can
projects.
just shoot an email to me to remind me this, and I can forward you the most updates on official website.
That's great. And then Bob Haley wants to know, is there any good news about reducing the hazardous materials in solar panels?
Technology is developing, but I think what will go first is communication strategies, because I think it is more important for the developers to comfort the local residents that this won't be a problem, and we are working on a way to figure this out, instead of presenting them, here's the technology and I can stop the hazardous chemical from releasing, and I think this two go hand in hand with each other, but I think the communication still comes first, and then it's the technology. And most importantly, not everybody is able to understand the technology. So even though we explain to them, they might not be able to understand, but if you try to tell them that this is not that dangerous as you would expect it, I think that works better.
There are also business models that are in their infancy and being developed, because much of a solar panel is recyclable. The glass is recyclable. The aluminum is recyclable. There are plans that anticipate resheeting an existing solar panel. That is to, peel out the actual solar cells and slide a new sheet in there into that aluminum frame with that glass. And again, so it's not as big of a disposal issue as these business models develop that allow for recycling and reclamation of the product. That would allow for, and of course, solar cells are getting more efficient all the time, so more energy being able to be generated by the same footprint of solar panel. So would in effect result in less solar panels to get to, say, a megawatt. As cells become more efficient and the energy production per unit goes higher, that's less overall solar panels needed. So again, we are in a transition, and it's in its infancy, but it's a tsunami that's coming. So I think we figure out how to manage it and what are the opportunities contained within it, and enjoy it the way the rest of the world is embracing it.
So as someone who has studied sustainable materials for the last couple of decades, what I'm curious to know is, and I don't know if anyone has an answer to this question, but has there ever been a study done comparing the toxicity of renewable energy versus the toxicity of fossil fuel energy? Because I heard lots of water getting used to make solar panels, but then there's lots of water getting used for hydrofracking, and that water comes up outrageously polluted. Are we polluting water in the process of making solar panels? That one I don't know the answer to.
Yes, I also have an article on that. I can send you the article.
Oh, great, thank you.
But still, I think clean and renewable energy is the trend. It is the future of this industry. And the city I'm from is very close to another city famous for the coal mining. And that is the city that had an earthquake in 1976, the very world famous earthquake that happened in China. One of the reasons why the earthquake would happen there is that the coal underground that used to support the land has been evacuated. So the land just collapsed. So mining would cause a lot of problem. Transporting the coal from a place to another also caused a problem. And another problem is that for decades, the electricity that we consumed were generated by burning the coals. And those plants that generates the electricity also cause problem and pollutions. So taking all those stuff into consideration, I personally would strongly recommend clean and renewable energies, and I've seen the development of those in my city a lot. Like when I was little, I lived in an apartment on the top floor with my parents, and we had those. We had maybe 2 solar tubes just for us to heat our water. It is just specifically designed to heat the water for a water heater use. And I remember when we moved out of the apartment, a company that is in charge of that came to us and just recycled our solar tube, and it seemed pretty professional to me. So I think technology is developing, and we can always figure out other way to compensate the loss of or the harm that is done by generating clean and renewable energy. But I still think that it is the final way out for the human being to resort to.
Yeah, that's I guess a good way to end. I heard a lot of hopeful comments today, a lot of hopeful information, and it looks like we are on our way, but a lot of other information to explore, and hopefully we can do something on renewable energy projects in the near future again. Lot going on. Abby, thank you very much for organizing and for participating with GreeningUSA as our intern for the past 6 or 8 weeks, and to Sean and Dr. Smardon, thank you very much for being willing to participate. And to our attendees, which I see most people have now are started to drift out, but thank you all for participating today. It was a great discussion. So I think with that, we should close out the meeting.